Hello and welcome to the Everything F1 podcast, where we review the Bahrain Brawl. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the Everything F1 podcast with me, James Tiller. We've got along with me today Danny, Coops and Adam, all ready to talk about the fantastic race that we had in Bahrain over the weekend. First of all, we would like you to join all of our social medias on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at JoinEF1 on all of those platforms. And don't forget our website, www.everythingf1.com. We would also love that you subscribe to this podcast. And we're going to be releasing this every single week this year and reviewing all the races and previewing what's to come for the whole season. So first of all, hello everyone. How are we all? Have we had a good week? And did we enjoy the race? Danny, how are you?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, great race. Good that it was the first one because we've all been looking forward to it for so long, and we had an actual exciting race. Yeah, loved it.
Absolutely, brilliant. And Coops, you had a good week? Exciting race?
Oh yeah, no, I was just plodding on, working, and yeah, the race was fun. One for the purists, I think.
Absolutely. Adam?
Yeah, very exciting race. Good way to start the season, even though wasn't happy with the result, but that's a discussion for another day.
Absolutely. You certainly predicted a max win, didn't you?
I predicted a lot that came correct, so.
Oh, okay. You hit the nail on the head a few times. Well, we'll delve into that as we do discuss the race. So let's start with obviously the result, because that's what everyone is aware of by now, hopefully. We did have a great race. It was very close all the way through. Max Verstappen was leading a lot of it. But then Lewis Hamilton came good at the end with a better pit strategy, probably. Slightly weaker car and some great defending and some maybe kind of rule breaking, overtaking, which caused the bit of kerfuffle at the end of the race too. Should we talk about that first? So track limits is going to be a massive point that people are going to be wanting to hear about. Coops, can you explain to us what the issue was and why? Well, whether the rules did change during the race or whether they stayed the same, and it's just a bit of complaining from the team.
Well, there's a bit of confusion because by the looks of it, they did change, but then Michael Masters came out and said they didn't. So basically what was happening was during FP1 and FP2, there was like 17 deletions of track times. Times because of the way that they went round the corner at turn 4, which is the only corner that really was the issue. So then they changed it and basically said, we're not going to police it, but if you gain a lasting advantage, or the way the notes were written was, we're not going to police it, but please refer to this section of the sporting regulations. And the sporting regulations basically stated that if you gain a lasting advantage, you'll be penalised.
Yeah. So I suppose the grey area is the lasting advantage, isn't it? So what Mercedes was saying, because they weren't going to be policing that they were entitled to use that if it was only for a speed advantage. But if it came to overtaking and going off the track to overtake a car by going off the track in turn 4, then that would be gaining an advantage, and therefore they'd have to give the place back. Is that correct? Am I wording it correctly?
Yes, that's
there?
basically how it would be. Everyone has focused on Hamilton. I've seen videos in the group chat or the group, the Facebook group, and other people posting things counting how many times Hamilton done it. But what they're forgetting is every driver was allowed to do it. It changed because, from what I've heard, now I haven't had this confirmed, apparently Christian Horner went to the FIA and went, can we do this then? And at that point, we got a bit iffy.
Yeah, well, there's that message halfway through, wasn't there? There was Max, you can use the runoff at turn 4 because Lewis Hamilton's doing it. So do it because until we get told otherwise.
Charles Leclerc came out and said that they were told that they weren't going to be penalised for it. So the drivers knew what they were doing.
Well, he said when Lewis Hamilton said when he was told you can't do it as much by the Merc team, he was like, well, I've been doing it for like the last 29
Yeah.
laps.
So, yeah, it's for something so simple. Like, the track is the bloody track. Why is this a difficult thing? Like I'm nearly 40, and I watched Formula One in the early 90s. That was what I watched. Now, track limits were hitting a wall, or hitting grass, or you're in the gravel. So there was no such thing as track limits or deleting times, because if you didn't stay on the grey stuff, that was you. So why is it that this white line that sits, there's the bit that the cars are supposed to be on in the track, there's a white line, then there's the curb. See that white line? That's the track. If you go over that white line, you get penalised. None of this, we'll just not police this corner. Because as much as we don't like 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐯𝐶, I don't think he designed the track for you to ignore it. So
I think the main uproar really is the fact that obviously the changing of the rules from day to day. Why do they need to do that? I've just watched the highlights on Channel 4, so it's fresh in my mind actually. DC said, why is it changing? And he makes a very good point. To stop the confusion, you set the rules on Friday for Friday free practice, and that remains the rule for the rest of the weekend. Why can't they do that? Why is it so? Why do they want to make it so confusing for everyone?
That's the problem. It's an easy thing. It shouldn't be confusing. Joe's just put into the chat there that Hamilton never got penalised because he was following the race director's notes. Verstappen breached the sporting regulations, which I don't think MD's really arguing. Like, he did pass him all four wheels off the track. That's fine. He gave it straight back. By that point, his tyres were done. And it was just trying to hope that Hamilton was going to make a mistake, which he very rarely does. So, but there should never be any kind of confusion with track limits. There shouldn't be.
No.
It's, we go back to Verstappen in Texas a few years back when he got on the podium. He passed the white line. And it was clear. There you are. And there it is. There's a wee bit. You can see the curb between the white line and your car. You thingied it. I mean, they were going stupidly off the track all the time. No. The good thing is the next track we're going to is Imola. So we're going back to old school. Track limits are you're crashing. Yeah. Am I right in saying Imola was when George Russell crashed behind the safety car? Was that Imola?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Well, we can speak to George Russell about track limits then. So, no, in an otherwise fantastic race, it ruined it a wee bit because we're talking about that rather than the race. It's not a big deal in terms of the race. It didn't take too much away from it, but it took enough. It's taken enough time. We should be sitting here spending all this time going, Mike, did you see that? But we're going track limits. It's just a stupid thing. It should never be in the conversation.
No, absolutely not. They shouldn't have changed the rules. There shouldn't have been so much talk about it. It should just be about how brilliant, the race was. And it was great to see wheel-to-wheel action pretty much throughout the whole race. Have you got anything to add to that, Adam, before we move on to the next subject, about track limits at all?
Yeah, it's just sort of like, whatever sport would you have this ambiguity of, where is the end of the track or the court or anything? Like, you think about tennis, the ball is out. If you go past the line, the ball's out. It doesn't matter about what part of the court it goes out on. It goes past the line, it's out. So how can that be the same in F1, especially with all the technology they have? They should be able to measure it within millimeters, whether they're out or not. Because I can't remember what it was last year. There was one where they took forever to look at it because they couldn't figure out if all four wheels had been off track because, the camera angles and stuff like that, they couldn't figure it out. It's like, how can you not? You've got a million cameras around the whole track. You've got sensors on the car. How can you not figure out if the car went off track or not? So I think it's something they need to really look at, but wherever the will is it ever matter.
Yeah, it's important to make note that Verstappen was actually breaching the sporting regulations whereas Lewis Hamilton was kind of in the race notes, and he kind of just abiding by the race notes, as it were.
Yeah, again, there was precedent for what happened to Verstappen. Had I think it was 2 years ago in the USA, where I think it was actually Verstappen passed Kimi off the track, and he was told to give up place. So not like Verstappen didn't know about it beforehand.
Yeah, so he did have to give up that position. Obviously, he just done what was an illegal overtake. But he was gaining on him for lap after lap. He was hunting him down. It was great to watch, seeing those times fall each time, and we were like, yes, he's gonna do it. He's gonna take over Lewis Hamilton, and he's gonna be the winner. It's gonna be a great overtake. Just a shame, maybe a bit of. I hate to say this with Max because it's something that we say all the time, but maybe a bit of immaturity. Maybe if he'd waited another couple of corners, maybe he would have taken it a much more cleanly and then just been ahead. What do you think, Danny? Do you think he was maybe just lacking a bit of patience?
Well, I mean, we all heard, Horner came over the comms saying you need to give it back. And I think he just thought, right, no problem, caught him a minute ago, going to do it again, not an issue. But I think instantly, I mean, I think Lewis had DRS at the time as well, I believe. So it was a bad time to let him past anyway. He should have held off. Thinking about it, he should have held off. He should have given it a bit more time. You don't have to give it back instantly. But I think what he must have thought was, that's fine. Lewis is on bad tyres. He's performing just as well as we are. I'll be able to catch him. But after that, he just lost it. He just got sloppy, really. But I mean, he'd done all that work. And it just, afterwards, he just didn't get it back. But yeah, I think it was just a matter. But I mean, what I will say is they all dealt with it pretty well, considering how Red Bull normally are, Horner running to the FIA and all this sort of thing. Max, there was no screaming and shouting over the comms about any situation. Even after, it was just calm. It was just, right, that's the rules, no problem. That's how it fell. It's so I think, I think the same would have happened to a lot of drivers. I don't think it's his inexperience or immaturity as such. I think it was just a matter of pressure, really. I think that came across the comms. He said he instantly thought, right, let's get that done, let him past, let's focus on getting it back. When in reality, I suppose more experience might have. It's hard, isn't it? Because we're sat at home watching the TV, able to judge everything. Whereas
it's much easier to look at it afterwards.
Oh, we're all brilliant F1 drivers at home, aren't we? It's
I am absolutely.
I'm great at it. Yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing.
I'm only good at it if I've got the corner assist on, traction control, ABS brakes, and a PlayStation 4 controller.
Yeah, it's very easy for us armchair experts to look at it and point out what you could have done and what you should have done. But in the moment, you're always going to make the slight errors and misjudgments.
One of the good things to remember is, because I mean, especially for Max as well, the reason he went off was avoiding a collision. Now I find that quite important for Max, because he's quite an aggressive driver and always has been. So that showed that actually, I mean, last year, all we discussed constantly was how he thought it was his track. No matter what, every time he got out, he went, everybody get out the fucking way. Why is he in my way? Even at qualifying, practice, everything. He's in my way, get out the way. Yeah. Whereas actually he was avoiding an issue and that would have really, he was in front. So that would have probably took Lewis's wing off, or a front wing or an issue at least. So he actually avoided an issue there going off, but caused himself one. So, which he probably knew at the time, which was why he understood exactly, give it back straight away. He probably already got that in his head as it was happening.
Yeah, maybe. Well, what about Lewis Hamilton then and the Mercedes team? Obviously they've claimed the victory. They've got the weaker car. But they still managed to do it, and they did everything that they needed to do on the day. Was it down to better tyre strategy, or was it down to driver skill? What do you think, Adam? You're nodding your head.
Yeah, I think the race for Red Bull was lost when they allowed Mercedes to drive a strategy. Once Mercedes got that first pit stop in, that was it. It was over. Because at that moment, they're going to be always chasing. And you never want to be a chaser, especially in F1, because if the cars the way they are, you just can't make up the time, especially if between them.
I guess the theory was that they'd push the stints a bit long, make the stints longer, so you'd have fresher tyres at the end to attack if he was required to. Obviously, he was able to do that, but
I think the problem was Red Bull was always going to have to react to what Mercedes was doing after that. There was no way to be, proactive, because you always went to see, are they two stopping? Are they three stopping? Are they going longer with Lewis? Are they going longer with Valtteri? They were looking over looking ahead rather than looking at themselves, and that was where they fell.
Are they out of practice at being at the front?
Maybe
they haven't got the strategies in order just yet. Well, because they haven't been at the front for a couple of years, or very many times in the last few years.
Well, as I mentioned in the previous podcast, Mercedes is such a machine at winning. They've found the formula to win races. Even if they're not the fastest, they will, work their way to getting a win. And as you say, maybe it is just Red Bull aren't used to that. But as well, the problem that Red Bull has had for the last few years is they've only got Max at the front.
Yeah.
With Perez back in the back of the grid after the first lap, there's no one to help Max. So Mercedes could drive the strategy against Red Bull.
You got anything to add about that, Coops, at all, about Hamilton's race and the Mercedes? Are they just too strong in the strategy at the moment, or will Red Bull sort of blow those cobwebs out and start performing in all aspects of it throughout the rest of the season?
No, it wasn't. I don't think Mercedes had it in the bag because of the early pit stops at all. I think it was driver. The reason you pay 40 million quid a year is for Lewis Hamilton to do that. There is no rhyme or reason and no justifiable reason that car should have won that race. But the only reason it did win the race was because Lewis Hamilton was driving it. It settles the argument.
Okay.
That race settles the argument. It's only about the car. Because that car was 4/10 slower to Red Bull. It's apparently not deploying its energy as quick. So there are a few actual technical issues behind the car. And the low rate cars are even more affected by the new regulations, according to what they're all saying. And these tyres were 11 laps older than Verstappen. The other reason which helped is that in the first stint, Verstappen had some sort of deployment issue with his throttle.
Yeah.
Which
he said that was on the warm-up lap, was it? Or the first lap round after the safety car?
I think even afterwards when they asked him, was it sorted? They went, we never sorted it. So we'll need to go back and see exactly what it was, which meant that Hamilton could stay within 2 seconds of him for the first stint. Anything larger than that, Verstappen was winning that race. But no, I don't think Mercedes had that nailed on because of the first the strategy call and the early pit stop. I think it was purely on Hamilton. Bottas was in front of Verstappen. That's it done. Verstappen's winning that race.
Okay. So what kind of a power advantage do you think the Mercedes has got over the Red Bull's got over the Mercedes? Are we talking a massive amount? Obviously, you're saying 4/10. Is that a race specific difference?
There will be other tracks that Mercedes will be better, and that's how Formula One works. The cars are very sensitive to conditions, as we all know, but in general terms, I mean, every time you went last season, it was Mercedes 1, Mercedes 2, Verstappen in his own race, and then whoever else decided to slot in after it. This time we won't know. We go to Imola in 3 weeks' time. We won't know for sure that Hamilton's going to win that race or Valtteri's going to, well, no, he's a wine man, so it doesn't make any difference. Or you know, Max is going to get pole or where it's going to go. This is, you know, this is good. You know, it's going to be close. If we get majority of the races where, and not all 23 races are going to be as good as this. Remember, we're apparently still going to France this year.
We don't want to hear that. We do want to hear that they're all going to be brilliant. Every single one of them.
We're going back to Paul Ricard this year and Monaco. So there's 2 races that ain't going to be like that. And have you seen Jeddah's track? Come on. Right, anyway. So, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the Red Bull then. The Red Bull have got a dominant car, or at least a stronger car, and their driver lineup seems to be doing well. Obviously, Perez had a bit of a nightmare in qualifying.
That wasn't his fault. That was the team. Missed out he missed out in the top 10 by 0.095 of a second because they put him out on the medium tyres. They should have put him in the softs to get him in the top 10.
So he was out of position anyway on the grid, and then around on the warm-up lap, he goes and stalls or something.
No, his engine shut out. His engine cut off. And the replays, the onboard view, the dashboard went off. Then he fumbled around like a 14-year-old caught on Pornhub and fixed it, and then managed to get going again. So it was a good drive. Where did he get? 5th or something?
Yeah, from 20th, he came back to 5th. Yeah. So he's got the skills and he can drive the car. Hopefully, if he's not out of position by such a large way in future races, he can become that wingman that Max Verstappen probably requires to cover off strategies from the Mercedes team. Is that what you think, Danny?
Yeah. I still say the constructors' title is going to Red Bull, as long as they can pull the socks up with that second drive, which we know they've always had issues with. But they've got a driver that can drive now, you know, consistently as well. You know, to go from the back of the grid to 5th is unbelievable. Really, he's a great driver, and I think, you know, starting where he should be starting, he'd be up in that fight. That's which it'd be interesting to see how him and Max get on driving 1st and 2nd, or 2nd and 3rd, because I think there will be a battle between them. So see how that works out.
Do you not think Sergio's had the secret word from Dietrich Mateschitz or Helmut Marko, whatever?
I think they'd be. I think they'd be stupid too. I think, but they are stupid at times. So it's I mean, we might get halfway through the season and they're swapping for Sonoda. So let's see.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we'll see.
So I don't think Sergio cares. Sergio has got a seat in Formula One with the amount of sponsorship he brings in every year. He's only there for a year. He doesn't care. He's getting a seat somewhere next year. He's already said that. He said that last year. He had the options for 2022. And it just kind of locked in. The album was so awful that he managed to get it. But I don't think he cares.
Yeah, but let's hope he does push Max at least. And push Red Bull to making this a really close constructors battle, because that's what we want to see. We want to see a close constructors battle, and we want to see a close title fight for the champion as well. So you mentioned Tsunoda, Danny. He was probably the most impressive newbie on the track. Let's have a chat about the young Japanese driver. What do you think about him, Adam? What do you think about Tsunoda?
Yeah, I think he did brilliantly for his first race, and I think the hype that was so built up was true. I was reading an article earlier that said if he hadn't gone for that move on Stroll on the last lap, he said he wouldn't have slept that night. You know, he says he's very ambitious. He says you know, his ambitions are very high, you know, on himself more than just the team. You know, he is there to compete. He doesn't want to be safe. He doesn't want to, you know, just, you know, make up the numbers. He's there to prove a point and to be a future star. So,
well, he certainly showed a very good skill behind the wheel this weekend. He's certainly shown everybody that he means business for sure. Have you got an opinion on Tsunoda, Danny? Did you see some of the great overtakes that he was managing?
Yeah. Well, I started the race by saying that I thought he was going to come off at some point, because I've not seen a young driver that confident but be able to follow through with it. We've seen plenty of young drivers that have got plenty of confidence and end up in the barriers, you know, constantly, because the push it to such a level that they can't quite, you know, they're going too far for their own what they can manage, you know. But he didn't. He drove brilliantly. Yeah. I mean, he started. I don't know if you saw it. He started before the lights went off. He was in reverse. His car was actually in reverse until he got it sorted. You know, so that goes to show he's still getting used to the car. You know, just like George in the Merc last year. You know, I had no idea what he was doing, and all these buttons. He wasn't 100%, you know, with it. But we know fine well if he got into that car for a season, he'd fly. You know, so I'm looking forward to seeing how he's doing. You know, halfway through the season. I think he's only going to improve. He did brilliantly, yeah.
Better than Gasly. Do you think he's going to perform better than Gasly throughout the whole season? Coops, you're nodding your head?
Yes.
Thanks. Right, so next subject.
That's the least I've heard him say. He's never answered like that.
First time I've ever heard Coops say just a one-word answer.
Yeah, I've never heard a one-word answer.
Succinct, to the point. Perfect.
He was asked before qualifying, what position will he get? Is he aiming for in qualifying? And he went first. P1.
That's the only way to go into a race weekend, I guess, isn't it? You know, I'm always aiming for first.
And what people need to remember, do you know how many races this boy has done in his whole career before he hit Formula One?
Nope, go on.
200. That's it. He's only been racing for about 4 years.
Okay.
And the boy just goes in and goes, nah, this is what I'm doing. He's 50% happy with his performance in Bahrain. He's the first guy since 2012, Japanese rookie to score points since 2012. He's the first rookie to score points in his debut since 2016. And he comes out and goes, I'm only 50% happy. I think he could win. He could be a championship winner.
He's got great ambitions. He's certainly got the drive to do so, and he's in a decent car as well. You know, that's essentially last year's Red Bull, is it not? It's a fast car.
Better than that. I don't think they didn't follow through. They didn't take Red Bull's gearbox or rear end. I think they could have, but they didn't. So although they're saying it's a Red Bull car, it's not. And then because they changed the front end of the car, and because of that, when they used the tokens to change the front end, they had to then adapt some of the Red Bull parts. So it's even further separate from the Red Bull car now. It's basically its own version. It's AlphaTauri's version of Red Bull, which is nowhere near what it is. But it's a fast car. But yeah, I think Tsunoda's going to be amazing this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. He just looked really quick. He always looked on it. He always looked like he was looking for the overtake. He never just kind of sat back and kind of watched. He was always just fully prepared to fight to get his place on the track.
The best way to put it was he just wasn't. You know, you see some rookies that you look at them and they're like, Formula One's just above their head. They're there, but it's just above them. Like they're just hanging onto the car. He's got in the car and he's like, no, this is my car. And I know what I'm doing with this car. And this is where it's going. He knows he's already, I think, should be in Formula One. And it's only been one race.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, it's a bit like Verstappen, when Verstappen came in.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you always can see as soon as they come in, you know, if they're going to be a star or not, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of does have that kind of hype behind him, doesn't he? The Verstappen hype, as we call it.
But the thing is, with Verstappen and with Tsunoda, they're proving it. As Adam's saying, you know, you had your Stoffel Van Dons of the world or Mazepins, and you're just like, okay, yeah, no bother. Even Stroll to a point. Stroll's a good midfield driver. But that's about it. He's not going to be a front runner. I can see Tsunoda getting into Red Bull and winning a championship. I can see Max Verstappen doing that. I couldn't see Stoffel Van Dorn doing that. I couldn't see I'm certainly not going to see Mazepin do that. So
yeah, so we're all excited to see what Tsunoda's going to bring. Let's talk about your favourite driver then. You've mentioned him a couple of times there. And Mazepin, or as we're aptly calling him, he spun in free practice. He spun in qualifying. And then he, just to round off the Grand Slam of spins. Sorry?
He spun twice in qualifying.
Spun twice in qualifying.
The second one was a brake-by-wire issue, which locked the rear wheels, which was the one that caused Vettel and Ocon to not get out of the top.
So he can be excused for one of those then in the qualifying.
Mazepin. You can't be excused for any of them.
But he did spin in the race.
Bigger than the iceberg that sank the Titanic. I mean, you shouldn't be driving a car.
Well, he spun out literally on the first lap, right into the barrier. I don't think he made it past about 4 or 5 corners, did he?
It was third corner 3.
But yes, so Mazepin, there's plenty of websites that you can go on. I've linked you to two countdowns from Mazepin's last spin. So clearly everyone has a very similar opinion of him. We can't really judge him on his driving because he hasn't provided any.
Can't drive, that's why.
Well, I think we just need to wait until he puts a few laps on the board before we can say that. But the other Haas had a very similar incident of Mick Schumacher the lap afterwards, or I think
it was the restart after the
restart. Yeah,
the Haas car's a horrible car to drive. I mean, there's no doubt in that. I mean, it's like the Williams of a couple of years ago.
Is this a consequence of having 2 rookies in the car, perhaps? No one to guide the development of the car?
Yeah, maybe. So are you excusing Mazepin then? Are you saying that he's got an excuse? He doesn't have to. He's not to blame for the spins that he's.
How many spins did Schumacher have? 1.
Yeah, he had the 1. Yeah.
How many did Mazepin have? 14, 15.
Quite a few over the week.
Yeah, I'm not excusing Mazepin. I'm just saying.
No.
I'm just wondering if the instability in the car, is that down to the drivers being inexperienced rather than being that bad, or the car being bad? I'm saying, is it because of the drivers rather than the car?
Yeah, I don't think there's been enough time in the car for them to even try and develop the car at the moment. So as much as I agree what you're saying, because they're rookies, they might not be able to develop a car. They haven't had that opportunity to even give much feedback on it really as yet. Maybe that's a question for later down in the season. But we know the Haas aren't going to be developing the car this year anyway. They're pretty much said, you know what, we'll call this year a bit of a no-show. Get our rookies some practice behind the wheel. Danny, have you got anything to add about Mazepin or Mick Schumacher, even for that matter, with the Haas?
Well, I think Mick does all right. Yeah, it's an entry to F1 for him, isn't it? It's but the car's terrible. Nobody's going to be able to do anything with it anyway. And even if they wanted to, they have no money to put towards it, and they have no interest to put towards it anyway, really. So what can anybody do? I think if there was a team to have 2 rookies in, it's Haas, because nobody's going to do anything with the cars anyway. May as well crash it on the first lap and get it out of the way so the rest can get on with it.
Let's move on to a team that we all enjoy then watching, the mighty Papaya. They had we went into the weekend with high expectations. We saw them in qualifying and they kind of lowered our expectations. And then in the race, they were fairly decent. So what would you like to say about the Papaya team of McLaren, Adam?
Yeah, I have to say I was one of the ones I was, after qualifying, I was going, sorry, what happened? Especially after being doing so well in testing and in practice. But seeing the whole story of the weekend, especially the race, I can see what they were trying to do. Perhaps they were set up the car more for the race and looking after the rear tires. Because I could see in the live timing during the race that they were able to keep the tires together look better than the teams behind them. So
Yeah.
they definitely seem to have a plan going into the race.
Yeah, absolutely. And they, sorry, where did they finish in the end? Norris was fourth
and seventh,
and Daniel Ricciardo was seventh. So they had a great show, really. They certainly, there was some good battles for Norris that we saw. Did anything strike you about the McLaren team, Danny, from the weekend?
Just how well they're doing, really. It was pretty solid, wasn't it? It's I mean, everybody's expecting them to get third again in the constructors, and I think it was a pretty comfortable first race for Norris. Shame for Ricciardo with the floor damage, but
Yes.
Shit happens. There you go. There's another swear word for you. But it's how it is sometimes, isn't it? But again, first race of the season, it's difficult to judge how things are going to go, really, isn't it? But Norris pretty solid. Ricciardo, we've seen, has settled in pretty well. It was just a matter of that floor damage. If he didn't have that, I mean, he came seventh with issues. So it just goes to show how good the car is, really.
The race pace of the car is decent. It's maybe there's something fundamentally wrong for the qualifying pace. What do you think about that, Coops?
No, I don't think it's a fundamental issue. I think they're just getting used to the car with the Mercedes power unit in it. I don't think there was really too much wrong with the whole weekend. Okay, they were slightly, and I mean slightly as in maybe a position or two out of place, out of position in qualifying. But, Ricciardo got some damage because Gasly forgot he was there, which was good for Gasly. And Norris just, he's fast becoming dependable, which is a wee bit worrying because he's still not in the same sentence as superstar Max Verstappen, George Russell sort of conversations, but he's very dependable.
Is that just a matter of time, do you think? When the McLaren's got that championship winning car, maybe next year, and we're going to see kind of hopefully 4 or 5 6-way battles for the top step. Is it a matter of time before we see Norris as the next one to win? What do you think about that, Adam?
It's hard to tell because last 2 years he's got up against Sainz, and I'm not sure what level Sainz is on because he got beaten by Verstappen, but he beat Hülkenberg, so he's somewhere about there. This race, Ricciardo had damaged his car, so it wasn't equal performance. So I think we'll have to see through the year and see how the two drivers, go up against each other. And again, McLaren needs to have the car to be up there fighting for races. And given what position we're in the race, being a second a lap slower than the two front cars, there's still a long way to go.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll tell you who the surprise of the weekend was, or what team was the surprise of the weekend, was Ferrari. The surprise, absolute standout performance from Leclerc and
out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know, and Carlos Sainz, absolutely out of nowhere. We've got a competitive midfield team in Ferrari, which is completely contrasting of last year's dog of a car. So I was really surprised to see them performing where they were. Did they take you by surprise, Coops?
No.
Okay, next subject. Let's talk about. So, were you surprised with the Ferraris this weekend, Adam?
Yeah, I knew Ferrari were going to be thereabouts, but to be to have Leclerc qualifying ahead of McLaren and AlphaTauri, I think was the most surprising thing. And I think Sainz messed up his final lap in Q2, so we don't really know where he would have been. But I think, like last year, they were very strong in the race, or in qualifying last year, especially Leclerc, and they'd fall back in the race. And I think that's sort of a similar trend this year, but just slightly faster.
Danny, what do you think about the Ferraris? Were you surprised about their performance?
Well, I think they couldn't get worse, could they? For Ferrari, really, they haven't been doing very well, so it's good to see. Yeah, it was all right. Yeah, but I know Binotto said he's finally got 2 good drivers or something along them lines, which was a bit.
Yeah, he can finally rely on both his drivers.
Yeah, which was
a very barbed comment towards Sebastian
That's
Vettel.
what happens when you sack your driver before the start of the season.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, treat him like shit and then expect him to still drive well. Yeah, it's. But I think he wears his own rose-tinted glasses, doesn't he? And sees things through a completely different perspective as everybody else. But yeah, it was good to see. They got on quite well, and Leclerc, yeah, flew really, considering how they have been and how they were last year. It's yeah, it'd be good to see how they do, and good to see if they can keep it up. That's the important bit. Whether they can keep that momentum.
It's important that we have a competitive Ferrari car, isn't it? It's important for the sport. They're the biggest team in the world, Formula One team.
The thing is, it depends what your class is competitive, because this still isn't competitive for Ferrari. No, Ferrari
it's not where they
is a top 3 team. It's not anymore, though, is it? And it's a bit sad that we're calling it competitive, because it was midfield, and it wasn't at the back or crashing into each other or, DNFs. Yeah. That's the, we expect nothing. So when we get a little bit like this, it's great. Yeah. When we get nothing, we go, okay, yeah, I was expecting nothing anyway, so it's all right.
This isn't new for Ferrari. I mean, they've been in it for 70 years. It's not the first time they've come out with a dog of a car. Yeah. And sometimes they've done it the year after they won the championship. I think that's 1980, 81 maybe, around about that kind of time. They came out with a car and it was an absolute howler. A bit like, was it McLaren in 2000 I want to say 2009, 2008, when the championship went right to the wire. They couldn't develop the next car, and the next car was absolutely dog awful. That was the start of the Red Bull kind of era. But no, Ferrari done well. Leclerc he's slowly but surely just building that reputation for someone who you can never overdrive a car, but you can drive it to its absolute limit. He's becoming very much like Alonso. But Alonso can put a car like the McLaren a few years ago. He was putting it in places it should never have been put in, and giving his all false hope, the arse that he is. And then getting the Alpine to 9th, and if it wasn't for a sandwich wrapper that ended up in his brake ducts, he could have got a decent result on Sunday.
Was that what it was?
Alpine came out today and said it was a sandwich wrapper they found in his rear brake that cooked his rear brake.
Well, I'll tell you what. Do you think the issue with, or part of the issue with Ferrari is they don't have a driver that's actually able to, like we said with, Adam said with Haas, but not quite to that point. There's the young drivers who can't quite tell them what's wrong with the car, be able to tell them how to develop the car to make it that much better so that they can get to the top of the grid.
I think Sainz is quite experienced now, really. He's been with quite a few teams.
They've got him this year. Obviously, Vettel didn't really give a shit last year because why should he? And then, Leclerc, he's only young, you don't hear much from him really, but maybe they just haven't had a driver in there to be able to, this is not driving how it should be. This is why.
I think the biggest problem with Ferrari is they're too scared. I mean, like no other team in the world gets front page news. It's part of Italy. It's part of their culture and their way of life. Other teams can be innovative and try something. If it goes wrong, oh well, it went wrong, but we tried it. You can get a few fans a bit peed off. Twitter can get a bit nuts. But in Italy, it's front page news. There's just a different type of pressure. I think for Ferrari, they need a Toto Wolff type principle. Someone who will do it right and be there for years to do it right. They keep it's the kind of brain drain. They keep sacking folk because it didn't work for a season or two. But these guys are actually quite intelligent, and they go to somebody else and do well. You know, it's just I think it's a cultural thing rather than anything else. Maybe that green glow on the top of the car is actually kryptonite and actually makes it go faster. I don't know.
I actually like that green. I know I've said it in the previous
I
podcast.
didn't notice it. It didn't bother me, to be honest. I was too busy looking at another green car rear-ending a French person. But aye.
So that's Ferrari. They exceeded expectations. They performed well. It was nice to see them at least fight in the mid-tier teams of the McLarens and the Aston Martins. It was nice to see them having battles with other teams. There were some great battles actually that we saw. Is any one of the battles that you enjoyed watching the most? Adam, I'll speak to you first.
Yeah, I think it was Vettel, Sainz, and somebody else. I can't remember exactly.
Alonso.
Was Alonso? Yeah, it was just good to see, close battles, over, a couple of laps, and no one crashing into each other, and them all giving each other space, and just having fun. It seemed like they were having fun out on the track in that race. It wasn't all about tire saving. It was just all out. Do as best as you can. Yeah,
there was some battles reminiscent of a few years ago between Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso. I think it was Silverstone, quite a few years back now. I couldn't tell you the year, but they had a to-do basically early on in the race, and it was very reminiscent, going back and forth, bit of overtaking, bit of undertaking. It was really exciting, really interesting to watch. Was there a battle that stood out in your memory, Coops?
No, the full race. I couldn't really. I mean, the one you just talked about was pretty good watching that. I mean, it's three drivers they're pretty fair in terms of their driving. So that's the kind of, you couldn't have a three-way battle like that with Verstappen and, maybe back in the day, Pastor Maldonado. That would have been fun.
It wouldn't have lasted as long.
Yeah, well, fireball last year. We'll wait till you see that. Do you think that he looked at the Grosjean crash and went, "Oh, lads, hold my beer. I could do better." Anyway, but no, I think I was too busy watching the full race. That came up, and I think I scribbled in my notes when I was watching it. Oh, great driving! And I think there was a couple of times I done that. I think Norris going round the outside of somebody at the restart. Was that Gasly that he done that too?
Yes.
Round at the turn 4. That was amazing.
Yeah, the onboard of Norris at the start was brilliant to see. He's very decisive.
And that's what he's missed. He's getting there because the first year he was really bad at not doing that. Norris, I know we're digressing a wee bit, but Norris at the start was a bit timid and a bit, oh, don't want to hit my car. Now he's just kind of like, no, this is where I'm going, lads. And, obviously he's not Scottish. He didn't say it like that, but, it's just the whole way through was great.
I wonder if it's with Ricardo coming in, sort of give him a kick up the bum.
Yeah, maybe. He might be keeping him honest. Driving him to perform better, because as he's coming to the season, Ricardo has said, I'm not here just to have fun. I'm here to be serious and perform in the car. So yeah, absolutely. Could be the fact that he's got a more experienced, proven track winner, race winner next to him in the garage, that he's like, well, hang on, I've got to put my head down and show that I can also perform to very good standards. Let's talk about Sebastian Vettel, because I think we need to talk about him. It's last year we were like, oh, is it because he's in Ferrari? Is the Ferrari just a bad car? I mean, it's only been one race, so we can't make a full evaluation of it yet. But has Sebastian Vettel just lost his ability? Coops, you look like you want to speak. I'll let you speak on this one.
Yes. I'm only joking. No, I don't think so. I think we can give him this race as a bye. I'm giving him this one. This is your only bye of the season. Because as soon as he done it, well, we didn't see it live. We saw the replay. I just instantly went back to when he rear-ended Verstappen at Silverstone and went, seriously, mate, you should know there's a big blue car. And you know, the thing is, the car he hit is the fattest fucking car in the grid. How did he know it was there? I mean, like, come on. So, so it's, yeah, it was annoying to watch him do that. But he had a whole...
And he was like, oh, he moved under braking.
No,
he didn't. He was on the racing line. There was no movement anywhere at all.
I don't know what's going on with Sebastian, but I'm giving him this race. If we have something similar in Imola, I think we need to have kind of serious discussions. I'm giving him this one. Aston Martin didn't have a great test. You get caught out by the flags. He got a penalty. He was out of position. But it's not a mistake a 4-time world champion should be doing. That's the other side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you there. What are your thoughts on him, Danny? Sebastian Vettel, do you think he's lost the plot? Is he lost his drive, ambition? What is it?
I think the bit that matters is the fact that immediately he said he pulled in front of me, he changed his line. That's bullshit. You know, there's no need in that. And that's the problem. The more he does that, the more he makes excuses for the issues in which he's causing and the incidents in which he's having because of what he's doing. And he blames somebody else. It's like he's going backwards. You know, that's what inexperienced drivers do. That's what, as I say, Max would do last year. You know, drivers are supposed to grow up, as it seems Vettel's got, you know, had his issues at Ferrari, and now he's going backwards. And then he's going, well, it's everybody else's fault. Well, actually, you need to go, you know, I messed up there, my issue, you know, and he did at the end. He went and apologized. But the point is, you know, it's fine doing that afterwards. But if during the race, you're annoyed at somebody else because of your issues, you're not going to drive to your peak performance. No. You're just not going to be able to because you're blaming everybody else, you know. So unless he can get, I think maybe the time at Ferrari has scarred him too much. Maybe it's who knows? I don't know, but he's certainly not the as Coops said, you know, 4-time champion. You can't be driving like he is now, and you can't be blaming everybody else for your issues.
Absolutely not.
It's the more you do that, you're going to get nowhere.
No.
It's a fact. Nobody gets to the top by blaming everybody else when something goes wrong. They learn from it. You know, we've seen it from Hamilton, always learning. We've seen it from Norris. You know, he's learned a lot. We saw the opposite from Albon. They're racing me too hard, you know, and it went backwards. You know, he seemed to immediately do Tsunoda, do great. Then he went backwards and he went, it's everybody else's fault. This is too hard. Right, well, go away, go back to your go-karts and you do that. You know, if you want to do that, that's fine. This is hard. And until you understand that this is hard and it's down to you, it's not going to work. So
Albon was actually signed to drive for a Formula E team. So all these people that were like, oh, Albon should have stayed in the car for this year. But the only reason he ended up in Formula One was because the meat grinder of the young talent in Red Bull was empty. There was that bloody puddle at the back in Helmut Marko's back garden. You know, where they harvest their soul. So he was in a test for Formula E. No other team wanted him. He's not as good as people make out.
But he may be back. You never know. We'll see after Perez's year at Red Bull. But back to Sebastian Vettel. Do we think he will perform better this season, Adam? Do you think he'll get rid of break this kind of jinx that he's got, spinning the car quite often this season at all, or do you think he'll be more of the same?
From what we've seen so far, you'd have to say it'd be more of the same. But I think it's to do with him. I think it's a personal issue of him. I think he needs to sort himself out first before he can, you know, sort out his driving. And you know, we've seen from other drivers, especially with I think it was with Grosjean, you know, getting a psychologist and, you know, to sort of help you with, maybe he needs to do some sort of soul searching himself and see should he still be driving? You know, is this what he wants to be doing? You know, if he's not performing,
well, don't use the same one as Grosjean then. That didn't work.
No, don't use the same one as Grosjean. But I think it's he's got himself into a mindset where he can't perform, and maybe needs to find a way out of that. But he's not going to do that with the way he's been driving so far.
No, perhaps he should. Perhaps he should start ballroom dancing instead of driving Formula One cars. You know, good with the spins.
Man, is he not awake? Right.
Okay, well, I think that's pretty much everything of the race. Is there something that we missed? Let's go around first to make sure we have mentioned everything that of note that we needed to talk about. Has anyone got anything else that they want to mention about the race, Coops?
Well, a thing that I've just found on gpfans.net.com was apparently Sergio Perez reset the car without any radio communication from the pit wall. He done it all on his own. He wasn't allowed. They're not allowed to give him any instruction on the formation lap.
So he did that
So
through
he
pure
shut down.
skill
He
and
went,
driver
"Right,
memory.
hold on, let me try a couple of things," and he got it going again. It was him. It was nothing to do with the team. For a
Brilliant.
driver that's his first formation lap in his brand new car. That's quite amazing. I haven't read the full article, but the Red Bull chief engineer Paul Monaghan has praised the brilliant new driver Sergio Perez for his presence of mind to enable to recover his car from the pre-race shutdown. So that's worthy of a mention.
Yeah, probably wouldn't have got that from any other younger driver or new driver to the team. Obviously, just showing his skills and his understanding of how
he obviously
work.
He wasn't phased by it. You know, the car shut down. He got it to the side of the road and right, give me a chance to see what I can do with this. And I mean, presence of mind as well to make sure that the race marshals didn't push him, because once he gets pushed away, he can't go anywhere because he's not allowed to push. So yeah, that's impressive. Stroll got in the top 10, but then I think the biggest takeaway from the weekend is we don't actually know where Aston Martin are in the group and the kind of standing
In the pecking order.
in the pecking order, because I mean Vettel was out of position and didn't really go anywhere. Stroll is kind of just Stroll. You can't really measure a team performance on him yet. And again, the same for AlphaTauri with Gasly taking himself out of the race at the start. We don't really know where they are. Everybody else is kind of where they're supposed to be. I'm kind of worried for my prediction that Williams will get above Alpha, because the Alpha car actually looked really relatively all right.
Yeah, Kimi had quite a good race, didn't he?
I can't remember where he placed. I didn't take a note of that one, but it was it 13th or something, and about that kind of
11th, yeah.
11th.
11th, and Giovinazzi was 12th.
Again, they just got on with it. Very boring race for them because you didn't really see much of them. They just done what they needed to do.
Was there anything that you think we missed, Danny, that you want to speak about? Any driver on the grid that you want to mention?
No, well, just I was going to point out the Alphas both did well. Pretty impressive, really, for a starting race. Considering
they've obviously got that new Ferrari engine working.
Yeah. They seemed pretty comfortable with it and did pretty well. Yeah, Raikkonen was a couple of good battles as well. Good to see him back. Driving competitively rather than just sat at the back trying to keep up.
Yeah, it must be soul destroying for someone with his history in the sport. He's been there for 20 years now, and our youngest driver is 20 years old. So he has literally driven in Formula One the whole time that Yuki Tsunoda has been alive on this planet. That's baffling, surprising. It's a great stat, though.
Checkered flag.
So I think that's pretty much everything we need to talk about the Bahrain Grand Prix. It was a great show, one for the ages, or at least one for this year. Certainly puts us in a good position for having a great season. We're hoping for lots more close battles between Max and Lewis Hamilton. We're hoping for some great mid-table battles as well. And nothing's decided yet. It could even be another team at the front in the next race. It does seem like it could be that kind of season.
Who was everyone's driver of the day?
I think it's hard to ignore Lewis Hamilton, personally. I think he did some great defending on Max. He pushed him off the track in terms of his driving style, planting his car where he wanted it to be. where on the actual proper driving line of the track, the better line, it made Max make the mistake. He defended well. He also attacked well when he needed to attack, and yeah, he showed his pure skill. You know, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, he kind of proved that it's not just the car by showing how good he is behind the wheel. How about you, Coops? Who was yours?
I think you're right. It has to be Hamilton, really, for everything you've just said.
Adam, driver of the day?
Normally, I would have said Lando, but I think I have to go to 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐯𝐶. I think for his first race, compared to the other new drivers and established drivers who didn't do very well, I think he really shone, especially in that race.
Brilliant, yeah. And I suspect there will be a few opportunities for him to become driver of the day officially throughout the season. It's one of those watch this space kind of things. How about you, Danny?
Perez. Yuki, it would have been Yuki, but Perez, absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm. To have such an off at the start, such an issue in a car that you don't really know, fix it yourself without talking to somebody telling you how to fix it, and then to get from the back and to get to fifth is unbelievable. He's certainly instantly shown that he deserves that seat, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you there. It's very difficult to choose just one driver of the day because there were so many standout performances. Let's now talk about our fantasy teams. Coops, you're in control of the fantasy league that we've got. Can you tell us something about the fantasy league? Who's at the top? Who's performing well? And who is performing not so well?
I know who didn't perform well, and that's me. But it's not that bad because I shared the same points as Danny. So probably for the only time of the year. Anyway, so Leanne, team 1, Leanne H, she scored 254 points, so she takes the early lead.
She must have used a mega driver.
She did. It was Lewis Hamilton.
Okay. Makes sense.
Second was ATF2, which is, I'm really sorry if I'm going to ruin the pronunciation of this person's name. It's Atif. He got 242. And then Luke on the third step in the podium was Luke, team 1, who with 239. And
so who's at the bottom of the deck then? Let's shame them while they're there.
Well, we'll shame them. We have Ivo, team 1, who got a whopping 0.
Has he got nobody in his team?
I don't know. He must not have not played. So he's registered, but he's then not put a team together. I don't know how you do that. So the actual worst player, there's 3 of you, shocking. Paul H, Fannon's Flyers from James F, and Matthew, team 1, from Matthew W, only scored 90 points each, which is awesome. I mean, one of them's Fannon's Flyers. I mean, they're just flying into a brick wall with 90 points. That's unfortunate. Somebody's got a team called Mazepin's Taxi Service, which doesn't deserve to get anything.
And who's in position 20?
Position 20? I'm assuming that's you, considering you asked.
What's the team called?
Last year's winners. Not that he's got an ego or anything. Tiller EF1. And last year's winners, Tiller EF1, is actually the name of his team.
Yes, that is my name of the team. That's why I just thought I'd... Because every time that my name pops up, instead of me mentioning it, it's going to be you that mentions the fact that I won.
There's a word up in Scotland, begins with a C and ends with a T, that we would use for people like you. Okay? So yes, you scored 180 points. Well done, you. So yes, we'll get 99, maybe 100 if the guy that came last puts his team together on the league. We've got a prize this year that Tiller can't win. He was an executive decision to not win a prize, other than just beefing us with the fact that he's beat us again. So 3 weeks to go. I think you're allowed to make up to 6 subs. Potentially Vettel might not be in my team by the time we start Imola.
So that's our F1 Fantasy League. If you haven't joined, you can join. We'll leave it to the halfway mark of the season, and then we'll close the league for the rest. So if you've got a team, by all means join. The league code will be within the Everything F1 paddock, and it will be on one of the posts that we publish shortly at some point over the next day on the main page.
Just before you go, we've got a small league just for the admin team, and I just need to point out that Joe's winning that and beating last year's winner.
She used the Mega Driver though,
and then
I've still got that in the bag.
Dan and me, we are sitting in joint third out of the four of us. Sponge does have a team in the main league, but he hasn't put it into our league yet, into the admin team yet. And I don't know if Adam's got his team sorted yet either. But yeah, Joe's top of just us, our wee league. She's got 209 points with Tiller 184. Dan and me are on 163.
Yeah, because I put a different team in there. I was, playing a bit of. I'll put one team in there. See if I can be.
Again, we've got
winner of both.
It starts with C and ends with C for that. I'm using the same team for both leagues.
I see.
That's why I'm going
putting all your eggs in one basket.
No, my eggs were broken before they went in the basket, Tiller, when it comes to
You've always had a poor start. But you do make up the positions later on in the season.
I do have the odd. I'm not consistent enough. I have the odd one that's decent, and then just not decent enough, I think. But we shall see.
Okay. So that's the F1 Fantasy. If you're not part of that team or that league, the league code will be on the page and in the paddock. Feel free to join. We'll be open for the first half of the season, and then we'll lock it to no new entrants. We also put on the page the day of the qualifying a competition, and the winner, we did a random number generator at the start of before we started the podcast. The random number generator was number 5, and the person in that position was a person called Josh Young. So if your name is Josh Young, specifically the Josh Young that won the competition and shared the post on Facebook, you are the proud winner of the Bahrain track map. So please message the page, send us over your address, and we will get that sent off to you ASAP. So that's everything from us here at Everything F1. Don't forget to join us on all social medias. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, @JoinEF1. We've also got our website, www.everythingf1.com, where you'll find all the latest news and articles. And also, please subscribe to this podcast if you want to hear more of our dulcet tones. We will be performing for you weekly on our podcast, and it'll be a mixture of the team. This week, it just so happened to be myself, Danny, Coops, and Adam. So a great big thank you from myself, and thank you from the team. Say bye-bye, everyone, and we'll see you next.
Bye.
Bye.